Welcome to Planet MicroCap. I'm your host, Robert Kraft, and joining me today is Dr. Milton Werner. He is the president and CEO of Inhibikase Therapeutics. It's a publicly traded company. The symbol is IKT on Nasdaq. And Inhibikase will be presenting at our upcoming Planet MicroCap Showcase Vegas, happening April 25 through 27, 2023. For more information, please go to planetmicrocapshowcase.com. With that, Dr. Werner, thank you for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Robert. How are you?
Not too bad. Just gearing up for Vegas, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've never been to Vegas, oddly enough.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, expect a good time. That's for sure. Well, Dr. Werner, this is actually our first time doing an interview together. So can you start us off with a quick overview and history of Inhibikase?
Sure. So we're a 13-year-old life sciences company. We were founded on the principle of discovering new science in-house and then translating those discoveries into new medicines. And one of the distinguishing features we like to talk about, but I get very little credit for, is that all of our scientific discovery work was paid for with our own money that we earned as revenue, like a business does. And we liked that fact because we knew when we stepped out onto the stage of this industry, which has a lot of smart people involved in it, the idea that we were going to transform a difficult area of medicine, like that involves Parkinson and Alzheimer's and ALS and other similar diseases, seemed like a fantasy or another failed outcome. In our case, we went to our peers to seek those resources, funded it through federal contracts and grants from NIH, from the Michael J. Fox Foundation, from Department of Defense, et cetera. And once we had validated that our approach to therapy was very sound, and our peers agreed with it, and so did our peers who reviewed that for publications, we then went public because the only way to fund a small molecule life science company that is pre-phase 2 is to be a public one. You can't do that in the private sector.
Absolutely. So you got into my next question a little bit here, but maybe get a fuller picture. From what would you say makes the company unique and different compared to some of your peers that are also trying to help solve some of these problems?
Well, the problem in CNS disease or central nervous system diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's is they have similar characteristics. We talk about this in the lay press a lot about, especially with relation to Alzheimer's. You have this plaque, it arises in your head somehow. And when it arises, it's only there when you have disease. And something about that plaque is driving disease. And for years, we've had this strategy, let's remove plaques with antibody or immunotherapy. The problem is, and there was another announcement today, that removing plaques has no therapeutic benefit whatsoever. Even for the drugs that have been approved, they have no meaningful benefit. Only one drug, Leqembi, which was approved about a month ago on a biomarker basis, has actually met the criterion for a clinical outcome that suggests it's affecting progression. But the outcome measure was 0.45 points on an 18-point scale. To me, that's not an outcome that portends benefit. And two companies now have shown that if you treat people who have a very high propensity to contract Alzheimer's and similar diseases, and you give them immunotherapy for as long as 10 years to remove their plaques, they do not reduce their risk of contracting disease. I don't know a better way of demonstrating that our understanding of the role of these plaques in disease has to be different. And that's what Inhibikase has now shown. We published that in Science Translational Medicine in January of this year. And what we showed is that these plaques are internalized by the affected neurons. The disease is entirely internal to the neurons that are failing, and that's where you have to attack the disease. And when you do it that way, you drive recovery of function, you preserve the neurons from degrading, and you clear the protein pathology. You remove the plaques from the right compartment. Where they reside to cause disease is within the affected neurons, and that's where you have to attack it. And an antibody can't get inside to do it. So that really distinguishes us from every other company on the planet.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Werner, where's the company now currently at in the clinic?
So we have two assets that are in the clinic. Our lead asset, IKT 148009, is a small molecule, potent, selective inhibitor of the non-receptor Abel Tyrosine Kinases, a mouthful for c-Abl inhibitors. It's in a phase 2 program now that will enroll up to 120 patients. across 3 different doses. We'll do initial dosing for 12 weeks. Primary endpoints are safety and tolerability. Secondary endpoints cover a range of motor and non-motor assessments inside and outside of the brain, because we believe strongly that we should see therapeutic outcomes everywhere in the body where Parkinsonism arises. And the 2 major organs are in your brain and in your GI tract, and both are highly affected in the disease state. So those secondary assessments will be used to understand whether we're seeing initial declines or changes in the clinical outcomes of these patients. And then once we complete a set of discussions with the FDA, we hope to roll each and every patient into a 12-month extension study to follow them for an additional 12 months. So we'll have about 15 months of data. And that'll be important because during that extension study, we'll get into discussions with the FDA on the parameters for a phase 3 program. We cannot hope to get an outcome on the label that says that we're modifying disease, because there's no agreed upon clinical criteria for saying you're changed the course of disease in Parkinson's. There is such criteria for Alzheimer's, but in Parkinson's, it's measured differently. And so we initially will seek a treatment outcome for approval. We'll follow these patients for a number of years. And if they stop taking symptomatic medications like levodopa therapy, et cetera, if they have improved quality of life, at some point in the future, you'll have to draw the conclusion that we must have actually modified disease. And that will be good enough for us, because the outcomes and the basis for this drug will be on the label. And that's what clinicians need to know in terms of deciding what the best course of therapy are for their patients. So it's moving pretty quickly.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, you're one of the founders of the company as well, or did you come in?
Right out of my brain, sadly to say. I've been working at it for a long time. So either I'm a fool, and I've been drinking my Kool-Aid, or it turns out that what we've tried to do is we've had to invent so many new areas of science. So kinase inhibitors have been around for a long time. For many companies, it's a very mundane modality of treatment. We've been focused on outcomes. We had to figure out how to make kinase inhibitors much safer than they usually are. We've accomplished that. We had to make them more selective than they are. We accomplished that. We had to make them brain penetrant. We accomplished that. Then we showed, quite surprisingly in the recently published paper, that even the neurons that are affected also have some sort of selective barrier in the brain. We had 3 kinase inhibitors that had equal functionality against the target, equal levels of brain penetration measured in animal studies, but only one of those 3 actually affected the course of disease, because most likely the other 2 inhibitors were not entering the intended neurons that the 3rd inhibitor did. And so we've also uncovered, but this is not well understood yet for us, that there could be a sort of drug selectivity at the plasma membrane of some neurons in the brain, and that we have to pay attention to if we're going to have successful treatment there. And there are many more features that we had to invent along the path. So it has been a bit of a ride. We moved into the Parkinson space because of some unexpected observations around 2016, and then funded it all the way to our IPO. We would have been past phase 2 if I'd been able to get the IPO concluded sooner than we did. But ultimately, it's been serving us well, and we've been raising money strongly.
All right. Well, with that, Dr. Werner, where can our audience go and find more information on Inhibikase?
Well, we put a lot of information out into the public domain. Inhibikase.com has scientific publications, a news flow. You can sign up for our news flow on the website. We also, I tend to be one of the most prominent speakers now in the Parkinson's community. I'll be speaking at an upcoming expert meeting in Europe, in Gothenburg, Sweden, at the end of this month, which is known as the AD/PD meeting. It's one of the 2 major meetings in Parkinson's disease research, clinical and non-clinical, in the world. We'll be speaking in the future at the Movement Disorder Society Congress, which will occur at the end of September of this year, when we'll have a number of other expert conference presentations throughout the year. And we put those presentations out in the public domain. So.
Well, Dr. Werner, thank you so much for joining me today. Really do appreciate it. Good luck, stay safe, and we'll see you in Vegas.
Great, thanks. Thanks, everybody.